Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Red O'Loughlin here on the Wise Ones on USA Global TV and Radio Network. This is truly a worldwide audience, and today we have a very successful author, speaker, coach, change management expert. Anyway, Kendra Dodd, please join us.
Hi.
Howdy
Thank
there.
you so much for having me.
You're an author, you're a speaker, or you're all sorts of things. Let's start with the author part and kind of wind our way back into your business, because there's a lot of stuff in your business that I really would like to get into. So you wrote a book 3 years ago, Perspectives. Tell us about it.
Perspectives, I wrote that and I started writing the book in 2020. I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota. For those who Google it and to find out like what went on in 2020 that makes it, I know everyone was dealing with different things in 2020, but what makes 2020 unique, especially where I live, was that is the home of where George Floyd was killed. And the work that I did, I was exhausted. I was helping people understand how that they feel about it, what are their emotions, how they can work. You know, that was a very heightened sense time. And I was in the nucleus of, I would say, a key storm that was international, that I know that individuals knew about that. And so I want to create something for people to reflect on themselves, to reflect and engage with others, and then hopefully get to some type of a better understanding of each other. And so my goal isn't to change people's minds. My goal is to broaden their understanding and experience, right? To go abroad within their own silos. And so Perspectives was created. It's an interactive. So if you've never written in a book, it is made to write, to highlight, to engage. So it's it's definitely a book. People say call it a book, but it's a journal-like essence, where the first part is you're getting to know yourself. The middle part is knowing where conflict, minor or major, could arise with others. And then there's case studies of how then and action plans. So it's really, it's a deep dive, but it's something that I found that people said was a need that I wanted to create. And honestly, I go through it myself and go through it. I have friends that are in customer service, or people in customer service, they're not all friends, that have engaged with me, and they say they keep it on their desk to go through things of how to deal with interactions that may not be favorable all the time. So that's a you know, as short as I could, a little bit about my book.
Okay, so a situation occurred, you documented it, and it helps others. And that's a major accomplishment, especially when COVID started. Now you have a different international aspect, because you were there, you had a major problem that occurred, and on top of that, the rest of the world wasn't the same.
No.
And so I can just imagine how much extra stress and complexity the COVID situation brought to bear.
Yes, absolutely. I think if you can imagine that, there were people that were entering our location, the area in which we lived at the time. And there were things that, of course, you didn't see on news. You can't, you know, and media and how you trust it. And so there were things that I was encountering, even in the suburbs in which I live. And then there's still residual from it. There's still buildings that are burnt, like that precinct is still burnt down. that you're still seeing residuals. I mean, the city's still really not the same, but you have a layer of that. Like there's some people I know, they say the hours aren't the same with retail because of COVID and the pandemic, but can you imagine just what happened within the nucleus of where I am? And so I think the biggest thing is there's, I'm not going to do it word for word, but there's a saying in Confucius that says reflection is important, but reflection without learning is detrimental. And I think that's very important. That how can we, and that's where this is. You can pick this book. What I love about this journal is that I don't expect you to read it in one sitting. It's something that you can use for a lifetime. It's something that you can maybe have changed. I'm going to pick it back up and say, how do I think about this topic now that I'm older, now that I've spent some more experience and time in different places? So it is at a gradual, it grows with you. And how this is created of your beliefs, where do I get those different perspectives from? And they're all through different layers, right? There's pillars. It's within the home I grew up in, it's within the community I grew up in, and then within institutions that I grew up in. They all influence the way we see things. And that creates our own reality when we do that.
Now, did you have your business before COVID, or is the writing of the book the result of your company?
Oh, no, I had it before COVID, and that's why it was so exhausting, is that I worked on conflict resolutions, I worked on teams, I worked on leadership. So that was what I worked with. So when teams were coming to me, they had a heightened sense of conflict resolution, resolve that they were trying to create because of all the things that were occurring. And so that's where it came from, because my clients, because I already had my organization, I've had my organization now for about 13 years. So okay. You're talking, I was about 8 years in, and that's where it came from because of the needs of my clients.
Okay, conflict resolution is a very tough way to work.
Yes.
Some of the companies I've worked in, it seems an impossible task. How did you get to being, I'm not going to call it an expert, but a major facilitator with success in conflict resolution? Because I think you may call it resolution, but it may not necessarily be fully enabled.
Right. Or you could say conflict management. I would say the biggest thing is I think we take things personally and we see things from our perspective, right? So if you were to say something to me, I call them bridge moments. That's what I talk about even in my book, is that when someone says something, well, let me start here in this baseline. And this is what I say all the time. When you wake up in the morning every day, so when you wake up and when I wake up in the morning, I don't wake up in the morning with the intentions to harm, to have conflict, to, cause dissolve, to have any, I don't want conflict. I don't think most people, right? I say most, right? There's exceptions to everything. Do not wake up every day and say, I want to, when I wake up today, I want to make Red's life hell, right? Most people are living what they think is true, is right, is just. And so what we do is then when someone does something to us, or we think they're doing it to us, it's not about us. It's usually always about them. And we have to find a way of slow down our knee jerk of being offended and realizing that, hey, and giving them grace. Okay, I'm going to give them a grace and let me lean in conversation. So even in the book, I have a 4-step process. I call it the SEED method, SEED, of how do you engage? It's situation, how do I feel about it? So evaluate my feelings and then empathize what that person's feeling and then make a decision. And that's the discussion and communication. So I think the biggest thing is we first have to stop being so offended and start giving people grace as much as you want. It's kind of like the golden rule. It's not. So it's the golden and the platinum rule. So the golden rule is treat people the way they want to be treated, but the platinum rule, treat people the way you want to be treated. And the platinum rule is treating people the way they want to be treated. So let's think through both of those, I think is very important. And we forget that sometimes.
One of the things my mom used to tell me quite often when I was young was sticks and stones can break your bones, but words can never harm you.
Yeah.
And something is, it's been implanted in my brain 100 times or more. That's just the way I look at things. But I like Bill O'Reilly's little comment he makes quite often, is that people believe what they want to believe.
Yes.
And when you have that situation, you're sitting at a table and on the table, there's a big 6 on your side, and the person on the opposite side looks at it as a 9. And no matter what you tell them, they're going to believe it's a 6 because, or 9, depending on, because that's their perspective. They don't look at the thing as, well, there's 4 ways to look at this thing, and you have to go from there. And so from that perspective, I can easily see where people can have a total disagreement, but to take transference of their beliefs and place them on you, or place it on what they expect of you, I think that's what we're seeing a lot of. And you have to, and as you said, you have to do some kind of self-reflection, but that's not something people do unless someone guides them that way. I know from decades in business that I worked in, they tried to give us our training to improve us as a better planner, supervisor, manager, whatever it was, but it was within the realm of our business position. Improving the individual person didn't happen in my life until after I got out of work entirely. And it was I wanted to improve. And so you start looking at the various things that are out there, the different people who are experts in this, and that really makes a difference. So you've taken that to a newer level by having a company that specializes in various aspects of change management, career coaching, facilitation, strategy. I'm sure there's a lot of companies that don't even have a strategy. They probably don't even have a mission. Why don't you tell us about a typical company turnaround that you had some success with?
Right. One of the things I want to say that I so agreed with what you said, Red, was that you made the choice that you wanted to change. And that's where it starts. So I just want to commend you on that. Like, some people haven't even made that decision, or they think they want to change. So I just want to commend you on that, of saying, hey, I made the concerted effort. But I would say the one that I think about the most is I had a very prominent client during the time, and they continue to, it's a long-term relationship. I'll call it long-term. We've been together. I've worked with them maybe 6-7 years now. And so I've always asked my contact of, why do you pick me? She's like, when I think of culture, I think of you. When I think of a setting or an environment of where this come from, she said, I think of you. And so I knew them prior to everything that happened in 2020. And I would say the biggest change that I'm seeing with them is they actually started with the foundation. Sometimes, and this is why I'm giving this example, is sometimes you have to start with leadership and they have to say it's okay, but they were okay. They gave a blessing for me to come, but we really started with hearing and doing focus groups and listening sessions to the individuals that are frontline, right, within the business and what they did. And they really listened, and then I would speak to the leadership. So I would be the conduit. I would say the growth that I'm seeing is now I'm seeing the leadership engage, instead of having me as much, which it shouldn't be, to be the representative and the conduit, that they're leaning in and listening to certain groups. And they didn't. And there'll be small things that the leadership thought they knew and they didn't. And so I consider myself that conduit of, how do we listen to each other, and what are the ground rules, or what are the avenues or the success techniques to do that. And so that's probably the biggest growth that I'm seeing, is that there's no separation between them versus us, as it used to be with leadership, senior leadership, or CFOs, or the C-suite versus the front line. And I'm so proud of where they've gone, where they continue to go. But I think part of that is the front line is speaking up, right? It goes both ways. And that's what was happening as well. So that is a huge, better community and environment and culture than it used to be.
And when you were in there assessing what needed to be improved, sometimes that's very difficult to break in and have somebody honestly tell you what's wrong. And then to be able to take that wrongness, whatever it is, and be able to present that to a decision maker. So I can see that that's a pretty tough job, and being able to be that conduit of, doesn't matter where it came from, but it exists. Yes. So now you got to get over the management hurdle, those decision makers. Okay, fine, that problem exists, and you have a solution or more solution, a solution to at least get out of it, and then further solutions to address it. I can imagine some managers are not very receptive. Uh, Maybe they don't see the same thing that exists in there. Uh, it's an interesting position to be in, but if you have somebody, as we talked about earlier, that's open to change, they okay, fine. I don't believe it, but yes, it could happen. Uh, and then how do you? I mean, you have to be very tactful and diplomatic when you're telling somebody they have an ugly baby. It just that's
Yes, I would say that here's the irony of that, Red, is yes and no. Yes, you'll have to. I think you can be honest and direct, but I think at the same, I don't want to say but, and at the same time, you have to be clear. To be clear, I don't know if you've heard, to be clear is to be unkind. And if we're not clear on what I'm trying to say, instead of beating around the bush. So coastal where I live, they call it Minnesota nice. I live in Minnesota. And it's passive aggressiveness sometimes. And so you don't really know where that person's coming from. So yes, there's a tact where you have to understand. So it's not the full sandwich method, but some people it's refreshing when people are finally telling you, you know what? This is why, not an ugly baby, because I don't think everyone is the eye of the beholder, but saying this is how I see this. And I don't think people realize and being open to it. And so meeting people where they are, I think is very important. Is, well, do you see this? And that's where I usually start is what do you agree to? What do you believe? And then I'll lean into that belief. So I never usually will start, I'll give them accolades, but I never start where I think they need to change because I don't know where their mindset is. So I think that's very important of understanding the mindset. And it's even the belief of how you interact and what relationships are. One of the things in this one company that I was telling you about that I've seen significant growth is there was a situation where management didn't know that it was where they had hours. I'm trying not to, I'm trying to protect the what this was, but it was there was a service organization and they had hours. And so what happened is things were shutting down. But unfortunately, because of the hours they changed and the extension of those hours and the bus hours, a lot of their front line rode the public transportation. And some of the individuals were walking hours to get home because the public transportation was shut down. And management had no clue by making those changes that it was impacting people's safety and personal lives. So that's a very important thing. And they did not know and they didn't know how. And so there was an assumption, which that's the worst thing to do, that management knew what they were doing and it was causing them harm, right? Things to be unsafe or some of them were spending the night in certain places because they couldn't get home because they lived a farther distance. So I think it's very important of people feeling safe. You're saying, how do they do that? But part of people feeling safe is actually saying how people feel or how you feel.
That's very interesting because that should have been something that the people looked at that before they made the decision. I mean, that to me is one of those things. But I like the part that you said, this is what I see, as opposed, this is the problem. Because sometimes people say it's a problem and you're going to be very defensive. But when you say, I see it this way, and you bring in a different mindset, a different perspective, and a pillar that you're on as an expert with the company you have in your own experience, that lends a little bit more credibility, I think, to defining the problem, because they may not agree, but you're not telling them you observed this problem here, and I think that's more palatable. So I can see that personality, that personal wanting to get in there, not offend somebody, but still tell them they have a problem. And that's a difficult thing to do. That requires some real skill. So
no, thank you for being aware of that. Yeah, no, it is a challenge. I think one of the things that we realize too is by nature, we try to figure out where do we fit in design. So even with the leadership I really made sure I heard everyone's voice. And that is even empowering at no level. Everyone wants to feel heard. And everyone has, no, I think the best way to say is everyone has a voice, but everyone is not heard. And how do we do that? And I have some assessments that I have done. I'm licensed with an organization that I help with, and it helps with giving an assessment of certain personalities yield to certain things, certain personalities get along. And so that helps with my team building and training as well, to have a validated assessment test, right? On I would say our tendencies. Right? We all have certain tendencies, but we all have the ability to change our behavior from those tendencies. And that's what we have to learn, that we all have the power to change if we want to.
I can remember a few of those, what do you call it, Myers-Briggs kind of testing or DISC or whatever. It's been a while since I've been in the world. I'm sure there's newer ones than that. And they would come in and we'd all take our deal. Okay, I'm a whatever. Okay, what does that mean? And, we see that in you. We see, and you see the assessment of those tests in the people, but 2 weeks later, it's gone. They're back to, okay, fine. I know I need to work on that, but it only lasted a short period of time. And that happens a lot, particularly when you're trying to change something, add a new product, add a new service. There's just all sorts of things when you get into change management that multiply the difficulty. And I think taking and improving the perspectives of the people, I think really does work as far as getting more productivity out of the business as a whole, because there's an understanding there. Okay, fine. I understand that's not the way you want things done, but it's still going to get done a slightly different way. And the end result is, okay, we met our goal. But when you're in there and you're assessing that and trying to make that done, are you obviously you're giving them new tests in order to get your level of satisfaction of where things are. Tell us about that testing program, because that's something I think is very important.
I figure out, first I assess the need of where that organization is. I have the validity test of that's my more personality, and then what are triggers that cause me to behave what's not in my most positive state, right? The negative side of me. So that one's a really good test. But if it's a culture issue, I have created my own. So I have my master's in human resource development. So I understand the baseline of how to assess. And so I'll have a culture assessment, and then I've created my own EQ assessment too. So there's a difference. There's an emotional, EQ stands for emotional intelligence. So if it's an emotional intelligence concern, it's when people are not realizing how they're impacting others. And so I'll do an emotional assessment kind of evaluation, and we'll go through that. If there is something where you're seeing this leader is being successful, but this leader is not successful at all, but this leader, I will do my self, address that I created, a cultural assessment. It's an awareness, at least. When I see that there is a conglomerate of all of that, that's when I'll do what I'm licensed for, right, through a third party. It's kind of like what you're saying. It's derived from kind of the Myers-Briggs, but it's very easy. It's only 5, and it's nomenclature. It's normal. It's main words like, okay, pioneer. I think you're going to nurturer, a connector, right? A creative, a guardian. And so they're words that you can use on a regular basis that people remember. Like, I'm Myers-Briggs, but that's like what was I stand for? T, what did the T, trying to remember things. And then, oh, okay, I'm a CD and DIS, but what was the C stand? These are some common words that I like that people remember that sustains a little bit better. But I think the biggest thing when I am trying to help and assess is meeting them once again where they are. No assessment. I wouldn't say that that one assessment is the best thing. I think the more we learn, the more we gain perspective, i.e. the more assessments even the better we can. What those assessments do is it helps us articulate how we feel. Sometimes we can't. There's an exercise that I do with one of my, in the 5 voices that I do, there's an exercise where it's a script, and I'll have people stand up and they read the script of that voice of how they feel. This is how I would feel to be liberated. And I've had people cry. I've had people start cheering and shouting because they're like, I never knew how to express how I feel, and this script helped me feel that way. And then what I like about this exercise, then they will state, this is what I need as my voice to feel liberated. Then there's a response statement saying, in return, thank you for telling me this. So there's a script. Then everyone else say, this is what I'll do for you in return. So you see how it's an engagement that for our relationship to do better, both of us have a responsibility. And that's what I love of, I'm responsible, you're responsible in making this better, not just one person.
I like that approach. But you have, I guess I call it you get some Gen Zs and some millennials and all different mixes. And even within that short period of time, you hire somebody, they're bringing their baggage along because they're a Gen Z or millennial or whatever, and they see things differently. They expect things differently. And I'm sure that your program is set up to identify the typical things of a baby boomer versus a millennial when you had that situation in management. Tell us a little bit about that.
I think the first thing, you made a really good point. We are in a very unique situation. This is the first time ever that you could have 5 to 6 generations in the workforce. That's never happened in history. The boomers are staying, so that's a humongous conflict resolution. And so I think we start, yes, I have knowledge, and I've talked about the generational differences. Now, here's the thing that's very interesting, because I have studied. There's a older book called Generations, and they say that it skips the other generation of them having things alike. So the boomer and X may have certain things alike. So for example, it heats itself. So it's like if I have my parents that were the boomers that raised me, okay, I was a latchkey kid, right? That's what they say, right? There's things, I'm independent, I'm going to work, there's certain things. And then I may raise my kids because they become opposite. But what happens is my kids may be more like the grandparents. So they said it skips 2 to 3 generations. So there's certain generations, for example, the Y generation likes face interaction. Now, it may be from a video and it's unique. So it's very interesting. And maybe that's the study. So I have a 15-year-old, Ted, I have a 17-year-old, and I have an 8-year-old. And relationships, because my family is spread out, that my 17-year-old have with my parents and what they were with my 8-year-old is different, because my 8-year-old, guess what, is used to FaceTime. They're used to video. They're used to wanting to see an interaction. So I try to look at the similarities first before the differences. And so that's what I try to lean into, right? Instead of talking about, well, you millennials, and people even are putting millennials in the wrong, great, millennials are managers now. They still think millennial, they don't even understand the different generations. But the things I try to find is, what are the similarities? Let's lean on that and then lead to the differences like I talked about before.
I like that. That makes a lot of sense, because you're telling somebody they have a beautiful baby, whether it is or isn't, doesn't matter. But you're reacting to the positive side that you want to connect with and eventually make a change, even if it's incremental. But once you get that confidence in the other person, that they have credibility, and they say, hey, if you do just this thing here, it's a little different, but it's something that's expected and something to make the company and your life a lot better. So I like that approach a lot. So you get in there and you can work with companies. You also work with people. You're a life coach, career coach. Tell us a little bit about that side of your business.
This has been a fun, evolving part of this. What I realize with my coaching business and my career business, that there's one interesting key thread with my clients that I have. And a lot of universities are doing a lot of work in that, especially I am actually out of town helping my daughter look at her college. So like my kids they're all very spread apart, as I told you. So I have a rising senior in college, a rising senior in high school, and even a 4-year difference with that. They're really looking at first gen. So in my coaching, in my business, one unique I've had from surgeons that are my clients that are in management. I've had from middle management and retail. I've had a very wide range. Now, what's been very interesting is they may be first generation within their career, meaning they don't have anyone to help, to coach, to mentor, to guide, to sponsor them within the avenues of understanding that culture and that environment. So I have someone, oh my gosh, I had her for 2 years, an amazing client. She came from education. Her family was from education, and now she's in nonprofit. And she was struggling. She was a great leader. She had compassion, but she didn't know how to lead within that culture. And so helping her through that was very, very important. So I try to figure out where individuals' goals are, where there are opportunities, but most important, coaching isn't telling people what to do. Coaching is for them to recognize maybe the blinders they may have on, or their own self-inflicted speed bumps. I call them speed bumps that's causing them. And some of them are more than a speed bump. It may be even be a wall. I'm trying to get them to a speed bump that they can continue to move forward with courage and open to the things that they want and desire.
Yeah, I remember one of the videos we watched talked about the different age groups, baby boomer versus whatever, and they're put on a 3-day suspension. Somebody in the older generation really takes that personal, but somebody in younger generations, yeah, 3 days off. And, it's just a different perspective of what that same thing is. And
yeah,
and I think a better understanding of, okay, I'm giving you 3 days off, the reason why, but it takes a little different way of talking to a different section of the age groups that represent those different personalities. And
right.
sounds like you've mastered that particular ability to do that. So.
One of the things that's interesting that you say that. So most of my clients are through organizations. So they're being recommended or thought through. And I will tell you, the boomers are they're even the millennials, the older groups that maybe their manager recommended that they have a career coach, right? Or executive coach. They get offended. Now, here's the thing. The companies are paying money to have me, but they think it's a negative thing that they're giving them a coach. They see it as, what am I doing wrong? Am I about to get fired? I'm like, they're about to get fired and they're spending money on you. So it's just so very interesting where the younger generation, some of them saying, well, I heard that if I become this level, then I can get in a coach. So they're going to their boss saying, I deserve my coach that I saw on my, handbook. And so it is very interesting. And then how we navigate through that perspective of coaching or getting help or understanding the need of that. And so you're making me think of even that's a challenge when I start new relationships, depending on what generation they're in.
I know late in my corporate career, I started getting involved in different books that people said, hey, you really need to read this. And then you read something and you say, yeah, that really applies to my company. But for whatever reason, our bosses should read this book, but it never happens. Now, there are some that will. You kind of mention it and the next level. But that to me kind of opened the door for a mentor. Okay, fine. I get his books, whatever. And then later on, you can go to YouTube and actually get, that's what he says when he speaks. So there's mentoring opportunities out there for free. But again, as you say, that really doesn't develop very well on its own unless there's some level of, I want to improve. And that takes a long time for somebody to come to that decision. So as a younger person, that is not even in their world for another decade or two, because they don't understand as I see it, their place in the company. So if they get that degree, if they do this, they get that certification, that gives them more credibility, so that it gives them an opportunity really to grow, but maybe grow outside that company. I've seen too many times where somebody gets their MBA and there's an expectation, nothing happens, or they hire a manager from somewhere else and that person, goes out on their own, leaves the company. So I can see a lot of conflict in people expecting improvement in their position in the company because they're improving themselves, but sometimes those don't align. Have you come across those kinds of situations?
I have. This is probably not maybe helping me. I have one client that's been one of my longest standing clients that I do provide coaching, is that when we hit that and when we evaluate, well, the first thing that I noticed that I've changed a lot, I've been doing my business for over 10 years now, is that I used to go by sessions, and a lot of coaches still go by sessions. We're going to do 12 sessions, right? And what I realize is that people then will wait, they won't do it, and they think it's about the sessions that make the evolution of change, and it's not. It's the time, right? So all of my packages now are by time. So I went from sessions to, then I went to 6 months, 9 months, and really most of my packages are 9 to 12 months, really. I'll do 6 months, and then I'll do a 3 month. And if I do an extension, I'll do about a month. I'll do, 3 months, because it takes time, because we go 2 steps forward. Some people may say, I go 2 steps forward to go 3 steps forward to go 2 steps back. Well, you're still moving, but we are human nature. It takes practice. It takes experience. It takes out of what we're doing. So that is the first thing that I look at. But also with people, like what you were saying, of how then do I help them navigate? There's always homework. I want to see how much their stake is in the game of doing work. Now, it's by what they have, right? Whatever challenge, okay, this is what I want you to work on, and this is when we're going to meet again. And sometimes the first few months, I might meet them every week. It depends on how challenged they are. We might meet every 3 days, and then it will lessen by time. But that's another reason why I have my coaching sessions by time and not by sessions, because I'm here to grow with you. And we don't know where that maybe roadblock or that self-fulfilling prophecy or limiting belief will limit us from being better than what we want to be.
Well, Kendra, we're almost at the end of the show here.
Oh, no.
Yes, it is. The time goes so fast when you're having fun.
Yeah.
I think you pretty much described what you can do and how you help people. So who's a good client for you, and how do they get in touch with you?
All right. Thank you. Really a good client for me is someone, I would say, that has the potential or want to do better. You have to have the mindset. I am not going to convince you that you can do better. I am going to help if you are self-aware, saying, I do want to change. I want someone to be honest, but I'm willing to do the work. Those are my best clients. And I've had a range of that. It took me a while to say that's what I want. I want someone that's needing improvement, and whatever level that is. And so what I've seen too is maybe it's not a fit. Some of my clients, a lot of them realize that what the environment they're in is not healthy for them, and they've left. So that's the type of client. It's a person. Let's say it's a team. Like, you know what, my team's struggling. I have a new team. I don't know what's going on, or with a group. I would love for us to get along better. And so that is another thing in which you can do. And so you can reach me at info@kendra.com. That's my email, and sit through the info, or you can go to my website. So as they're showing is www.kendra.com. Part of my organization was fulfilled to be. And so I do have some partners that help me and that we can navigate together. But my ideal client is really those who are seeking to do the work. So thank you so much. This has been so much fun. The time went by so fast.
Okay, for those people in our audio audience that will not be able to view the video part, www.kendra, Dodd. So it's KENDRAQ DODD.com, and to reach her is info@KendraQ.com. So KENDRAQ DODD.com. And so, Kendra, it's been super nice having you here today. I look forward to catching you on this program in the future, or one of the other ones we have. So thank you very much, and I wish you the best. And
thank you so much. I enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you. And closing out, Red O'Laughlin here on the wise ones on USA Global TV and Radio Network. But before I leave, I want to be able to highlight the fact that the USA Global TV and Radio Network has a couple of YouTube channels, and we are trying to build up one of the ones so we can get 100,000. So on the slides we have today, it says we 38,000. We're looking goal of 100,000, and then we're trying to do that same on a slightly different YouTube channel. And so we started out at 0, and not literally, but anyway, we have goals there. So please go to YouTube, type in USA Global TV, and subscribe as best you can. So anything else I can think of? No. So I think I'm going to declare this program finished, and we will catch you next week. I look forward to seeing you. Bye now.
Hello, I'm children's author Diane Floyd Bain, and I am co-host for several of the USA Global TV and radio shows. I joined because of the purpose of the USA Global TV and radio. They provide content for the viewers and listeners, an opportunity for people around the world to have their own show or even be a guest on an existing show. We truly believe in helping others get their positive message out to the world. We also have the opportunity for the listeners. You can watch on several platforms, and on YouTube, you can ask questions and even give a comment. We absolutely love it. I love being part of the USA Global TV and radio because I love positive messages, and who doesn't? And we need more of that in the world. We are a family, and we hope you will join us and become part of the family too.
USA Global TV and Radio proudly presents Unstoppable Podcast. No matter where you are right now or what circumstances you face, lasting success is within your reach. Starring Ralph Graves Jr., author of the book Unstoppable. Ralph is a pastor, transformational speaker, and consultant. Follow Ralph on social media at Ralph Graves Jr. Unstoppable Podcast Wednesdays on USA Global TV and Radio. You are unstoppable.